Hello, this is week 4 of our class, and we're going to discuss the family and maternity leave. We're going to get more into maternity leave, even though we've already touched on it a little bit. Okay, we're going to get more into it this week. So first, let's talk about the family. What does that mean when we hear family? It's traditional versus non-traditional. We have traditional family, which it can be a man, a woman, or mother and a father, and then children, okay, or one child or multiple children, whatever. That's the traditional family, right? But we know recently there are non-traditional families, single parent households where there's just one mother and no father, or one father and no mother, or a mother and a mother, or a father and a father, okay? So we have to understand that the family dynamics has shifted considerably from the way it used to be back in the 1940s, 50s, 60s, even to the 70s, okay? And it doesn't mean that it's right or it doesn't mean that it's wrong. It's just different. The problem with different is many people are very stuck in their ways, very traditional, shall we say, and they don't like or adapt to change very easily. So this is why we have problems with some conservatives thinking that marriage or the traditional family needs to be preserved or sanctified. And what we need to have them try to understand is everybody is different, and it's okay if there is a non-traditional family. Okay. Back then, the family structure used to be the man went to work or the husband went to work, the mother stayed home, she took care of the house during the day, she made the lunches for the kids and took them off to school, maybe walked them to school or drove them to school or whatever. I grew up in a traditional household. My father went to work in the morning and my mother walked me to school. And then I came home in the afternoon. She'd have a snack before dinner. She'd be busy in the kitchen making dinner. We would play or do our homework or whatever it is. And then when my dad got home in the evening, we'd have dinner at the table. We'd all have dinner and we'd watch TV together at night and we'd go to bed and wake up the next day and start the whole thing over again. Okay, that was a very traditional family. But I grew up in the 70s. But what happened by the late 70s is divorce rates started going up because more women were working and more women were gaining freedom. And some traditional men didn't like that. And because they didn't like that, it created arguments and it created difference of opinion about how a family should be run. And that's how we started getting the onset of more single family households starting in the late 70s into the early 80s. My best friend, who no longer is alive because he died through the COVID pandemic, but he was a product of a single parent household. When he was 12, his father chose to vacate the family because the mother wanted to go in a different direction. They argued about that. They didn't like that. So from the time he was 12, he was with only just a mother. Okay, so she had to be the mother and the father, the provider, had to make sure everything was taken care of. Okay, there's that double standard again. So we talk a little bit about marriage and mothers and fathers in marriage. Let's talk about the idea of marriage or the concept of marriage. Traditional marriage is a system of ownership, if you think about that. And why do we say traditional marriage is a system of ownership? Because in the wedding ceremony, there's this line at the very beginning where the pastor or the priest or whoever is conducting the marriage will say, "Who gives this woman to be married?" Let's focus on that word gives. That is how women are treated as an object. Remember I talked about women being treated as an object versus sex object? What do we do with an object that we no longer want? We give it away, right? So who gives this woman away to be married? Plain and simple, right there. A woman is an object. She moves from one owner to another owner. The owner was her father, who gives her away to the man that she's going to be married, and so that she can be his property. So those are things that we can think about. Just think about that. It's been a tradition for many years, right? No one's ever thought about it. It's just something we did and we followed. Okay. And in some cultures, there's this thing called a dowry. Dowry. I never said that word. Dowry. In essence, it's kind of like a gift that the woman brings with her when she's married. The concept behind that is she's going to go join a new family, her husband's and her husband's family. He's going to be the provider of many things for her so that she doesn't feel like she's coming into the marriage empty-handed. She says, I don't have wealth or money to give you, but my family might own a farm. And so my father is allowing me to bring this pig or this cow to your family. And that's my contribution to the marriage. Okay? Yes, that's very ancient time and very ancient thinking. The dowry nowadays may be a financial gift. Okay? But still, it is still some sort of financial contribution, some sort of contribution to the marriage as she's entering into a new marriage for the first time, okay? It's like a one-time payment to be married to this man. It is still practiced in Southeast Asia and India. It's still very much so a practice. Arranged marriages are still done in those countries. Their children are being married, right? Marriages happen as young as 13 and 14 years of age, and the two families have met when the child is born and have agreed that when their children or whatever get to the age of 13 or 14, whatever they decide, they will have a wedding ceremony and these children will marry and the two families will unite. So those are all planned out for you. I have a very dear friend who is 62 years old now, and in his late 20s, he was not married yet because he was working. He was very much into his profession. And his family was like on his case. When are you getting married? You got to get married. We got to get this marriage is done for you. What are we going to? So in order to escape that, he moved or immigrated to the United States. He's now an American citizen here. And when I met him some 17 years ago, 18 years ago now, he told me several years back, of course, how he ended up in the United States because he did not want to be a product of an arranged marriage because he was a homosexual, didn't want to be married the rest of his life to a woman and never be able to be divorced and be forever felt like he was trapped in this marriage or this relationship or this commitment. So those are one of the things that we have to consider, okay? Women are a financial burden. That's what they used to be. They were a financial burden to the household because the man had to be the provider of all things, okay? That's what the reason for this dowry. I'm sorry, I got off topic. The dowry. Women are a financial burden. They create the marriage, is that they consider the marriage to be some sort of imbalance. So the dowry kind of helps to offset that imbalance, okay? And the man's family is deemed to be the better side of the family because it comes from the man's side. He's like the more powerful family. And so she will forget her traditions and her values that she grew up with on her side, and she will conform to whatever their traditions and their values are. So she loses her own right. And what do we also do? We make the woman change her name. We all know that as a name is a very powerful thing. That's our identity. That's who we are. So she loses her identity by having to give up her name that she's known for a while to accept this man's name. That's all traditional. So in a non-traditional sense, women are no longer required. Well, not they were required. They just did it because that's what they thought. That was tradition. Women don't have to do that. And many women are getting married and choosing not to change their name. So it was interesting when I got married to my husband in California. We went to the courthouse after the Proposition 8 passed in California where they made gay marriages or same-sex marriages observed in California, not the whole country yet. We went over to California to get married. And we were at the Justice of the Peace or the court. And the clerk said, who's changing whose name to who, right? And we never thought about that. To me, it was never a consideration. And neither was him. And it's like, neither of us. And I said, she says, neither are you taking the other person's name? I says, no. Do we have to? She says, no, we just wanted to know if you're changing your name. But isn't it interesting that they asked that question? Because it's on the application, are you going to change your name? And we left that spot open. So she just assumed that one of us didn't answer the question. So she had to ask that question. So it was very interesting. Okay. So in our culture, young ladies or women are pressured to get married. So as a girl is growing up, she sees that pressure and she understands her responsibility as a woman in our society. So she starts fantasizing about her wedding dress and what it's going to look like and how long her veil will be, if she's going to have a train, all those things. Like what type of flowers will she have? Where will the venue be? She starts planning a wedding in her head or whatever because she is conditioned to know that that's what she's expected to do. If a woman doesn't want to get married, she doesn't have to get married, right? Okay. So once they're married, they start pressuring them. Well, when am I going to have my grandchildren? When are you going to have children? I know a colleague who is 37 years old and has a 5-year-old child. She chose to have this child in her 30s because she wanted to get her bachelor's degree. She wanted to get her master's degree. She wanted to become a professor and start teaching for a while so that she has some sort of solid foundation financially with her husband to bring a child into the world. Not a bad plan at all. But because that's what she wanted, and that's not what the rest of the family wanted for her, they pressured her into like, when are you getting to have your children? You know you're getting old. That you're getting old line is supposedly fear them into submission, right? And she hates that question that she has to ask or answer every time. We should not pressure anybody as to when they plan on having children because maybe they don't want to have children. If they want to have children, that's okay. But if they want to have children, that's wonderful. But they should be able to have children on their own timeline, not on what everybody else expects them to be. Like I said, she's 37 now and has a 5-year-old child. She's in a PhD or a doctorate program. She wants to finish that in another year or so without bringing a child into the world and trying to not be able to give it the attention that it deserves. I say it because we don't know if we are male or female, right? And so she's having pressure. Well, when are you going to have a second one, right? We need to stop that. As a society, we need to stop that because it's not our business. If a woman chooses to never have a child, that should become socially acceptable. And if the parents don't like that, that's too bad that they don't like that. It's not their choice to make her or him have children. Okay, that's all I'm going to talk about as the family. Let's get more deeply into this FMLA and Family Medical Leave Act and specifically maternity leave. I know I talked about it a couple times, but I want to get more into that. So in 1993, there's a federal law that was passed called the FMLA, Family Medical Leave Act. It was predominantly created to allow women the option to have a child and go away from their job for a while and come back. It protected their job so that they wouldn't lose their job if they had children. It wasn't specifically created for women to have children or go on maternity leave, but that was kind of like the key idea. And so it's extended, obviously, to anybody who needs to be away from their job for an extended period of time under certain protective guidelines, and be able to come back and get their job. It allows for 12 weeks of unpaid leave. So the woman can go away for up to 12 weeks and not be paid and still be able to come back and get her job. Before, she'd have to apply, if the job was even open, she had to apply for it again and be deemed qualified. And in the time that she was gone, she was no longer an employee. So if they didn't want her to come back, they could have changed the qualifications. They could have made her disqualified by changing the qualifications. So if she tried to come back, they said, well, you no longer meet the qualifications, so unfortunately we're not going to be able to hire you back. Okay, so that was the protections she did not have. So how is this, if she wanted to be paid, some employers provide 12 weeks of paid. Oh, wonderful. But where does that pay come from? It's not any additional benefit. They just call it a benefit because the law states that they have to provide them with that leave, okay? It comes from their PTO, what they call personal time off. So as an employee of a company, if they are lucky enough to work at a company where they get paid vacation or sick time, they can accrue hours in their vacation and their sick. So if they're going to have a child and they know they're going to want to take 6 weeks, 7 weeks, 8 weeks, up to 12 weeks off, they may need the number 144 hours or whatever that number of hours is. Again, math, I don't know the math. 8 hours times 12 weeks, okay? 8 hours a day times 12 weeks, whatever that number is, or even 6 weeks. They have to save up that time so that they have the time off and they don't lose any money so that their finances are sustained. So the company provides them this benefit of what we call maternity leave, but they're not really giving them anything because they have to take it out of vacation. And I don't know, I've never had a child, but I can just imagine that if a woman had a baby, she's not on any vacation. She's not getting any rest. She's not relaxing. The baby's going to be up multiple times in the night. And more than likely, she's the one that's getting up to take care of that child. Maybe the father, but we don't know. But still, the father's going to work. She's home. She has to take care of that child. That is not a vacation. Okay? My solution, but no one wants to hear me. I brought it up to the employer where I work for, Maricopa Colleges. No one did anything about it. Is we have all these benefits that you can opt in because not everybody wants the same benefits. But if you want that benefit, go ahead, opt into it. Why is maternity leave not a benefit that a woman can opt into having? And if there's a benefit, maybe the employer doesn't take part in that, and that's okay. They don't have to. But give them the option to opt in, and they can buy every pay period with a financial contribution for that benefit equal in the number of hours that they get. So let's just say they want to buy 3 hours every pay period, and that's going, they get $20 an hour, they put, $60 aside or whatever it is, however they want to do it. They put money aside and they have maternity leave in their bank. So when they want to have this baby, they take the time off from their maternity leave bank, not their vacation. Plain and simple, but they don't do that. Okay. So that's what I want you guys to know this week about family and the maternity leave. So when you are doing your research and your reading, look more into FMLA, maternity leave, and look more into how we define traditional marriage and traditional family and non-traditional marriage and non-traditional families. Okay? And make sure to post your discussion to the prompt, respond to 2 of your students or your classmates, and do the end of the module quiz. And as always, I'm right here if you need me. Ask any questions that you need. Okay, thank you. Bye-bye.